What a day, and what a woman. She is my champion in life, I'll tell you that. What an extraordinary person. And this really is what New Hampshire is all about, isn't it? A day like this, at a farm like this. And this is what America's about as well, don't you think? Oh, gosh. Doug and Stella, thank you so much for opening your farm. Now, how do you open a farm? Opening us to all be able to come out in your farm and enjoy this time with you. I see a lot of friends here. Some of whom have retired. I saw some college students, and I'm sure you're glad that exams are over. Couples are here with their kids, as you see from the front. I spoke to a single mom who is taking some time off from work today. Don't worry, we won't tell anybody. My guess is that everybody here has a different story they could tell. We have different backgrounds. We wake up in the morning and go to different jobs or look for different jobs. We go to churches, different churches, or maybe don't go to church that much. I bet some of you have families that have lived in New Hampshire for 200 years or more. And of course, there are others that have come here more recently by sneaking over the border from Massachusetts. You know, the taxes are better over here, you know that. But here on this beautiful June day, we come together to begin a process that we often quite naturally take for granted. It's really, however, one of the great achievements in the history of the world. For all of our country's wealth and influence in the world, those are not the source of America's greatness. The true source of our greatness is America's self-rule, a government that answers to a free and independent people. We live in the most powerful nation that's ever existed. And it all goes back to a few men and women who had the courage to stand and even to die for their belief in liberty and the equality of all humankind. Because of their vision, the United States of America is not ruled by a monarchy or even controlled by an aristocracy. I guess though sometimes the people in Washington might act otherwise. We don't have a House of Lords. We don't have a ruling class that inherits their power. And by the way, as the Red Sox like to remind the New York Yankees regularly, there are no dynasties in America. Who is it that rules this great nation? You do. Every 4 years, you decide who it is that's going to give the State of the Union address. Who will set the course for the country? Who will be the commander-in-chief? And what's true right here in New Hampshire, on this farm, has always been true in America. Though each of us comes from very different backgrounds, though each of us has chosen to walk a different path in life, we are united by one great, overwhelming passion. We love America. We believe in America. Today we're united not only by our faith and belief in America, we're also united by our concern for America. This country we love is in peril. And that, my friends, is one reason why we're here today. A few years ago, Americans did something that's really quite American in its nature. It's the sort of thing we like to do. We gave someone new a chance to lead the country. Someone we hadn't known for very long, someone who didn't have a long record, but someone who promised to lead us to a better place. At the time, we didn't know what kind of president he'd make. It was a moment of crisis for our economy, and when Barack Obama came to office, we wished him well and hoped for the best. Now, in the third year of his four-year term, we have more than slogans and promises to judge him by. Barack Obama has failed America. When he took office, the economy was in recession, and he made it worse, and he made it last longer. 3 years later, over 16 million Americans are out of work or just quit looking for jobs. Millions more are unemployed. 3 years later, unemployment is still above 8%, and that was the figure he said his stimulus would keep from happening. 3 years later, foreclosures are still at record levels. 3 years later, the prices of homes continue to fall. 3 years later, our national debt has grown nearly as large as our entire economy. And families are buried under higher prices for food and higher prices for gasoline. It breaks my heart to see what's happening to this great country. These failing hopes make up President Obama's own misery index. It's never been higher. And what's his answer? He says this: I'm just getting started. No, Mr. President, you've had your chance. We, the people on this farm, and citizens across the country, are the ones who are just getting started. I visited with a family, Kathy and Dave Tyler, who live in a suburb of Las Vegas, Nevada. You probably know families just like them right here. They're in their early 40s. It's a couple who had worked hard, sacrificed to buy a home in a good neighborhood, the sort of place that they wanted their daughter, Allie, to grow up in. But now that neighborhood is being crushed by this Obama economy. First, their neighbors started losing their jobs, and then they lost their homes. And all around the Tylers, there are abandoned homes and abandoned dreams. When the Tylers wake up in the morning and they get Allie ready to go off to school and then go to work and do everything they can to make it to the end of the month and hold their lives together, it doesn't matter to them if they're Republican or Democrat, independent or libertarian. They're just Americans, an American family. And across the richest and greatest country on earth, there are millions of American families just like the Tylers. Folks who grew up believing that if they played by the rules, worked hard, they'd have the chance to build a good life with steady work and always the possibility that with a little harder work, they might be able to get ahead. And in that America, you don't wonder if your children will have a better life. You know they will. You know it the same way that we know that the sun is going to rise in the east on this great farm. The confidence in a better tomorrow defines us as Americans. When generations of immigrants looked up and saw the Statue of Liberty for the first time, they surely had a lot of questions about the life that was before them. But one thing they knew beyond any doubt, and that is they were coming to a place where anything was possible, that in America, their children would have a better life. I believe in that America. I believe you believe in that America. It's an America of freedom and opportunity, a nation where innovation and hard work propel the most powerful economy in the world, a land that is secured by the greatest military the world has ever seen and by friends and allies across the world who link arms with us. President Obama sees a different America, and he's taken us in a different direction. A few months into office, he traveled around the globe to apologize for America. At a time of historic change and great opportunity in the Arab world, he's hesitant and uncertain. He hesitated to speak out for the dissidents in Iran. But his administration boasts that he is leading from behind in Libya. He speaks with firmness and clarity, however, when it comes to Israel. He seems firmly and clearly determined to undermine our longtime friend and ally. He's treating Israel the same way so many European countries have, with suspicion and distrust and an assumption that Israel is somehow at fault. To his credit, the president ordered the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. And in Afghanistan, the surge was right. But announcing a withdrawal date, that was wrong. The Taliban may not have watches, but they do have calendars. Now here at home, the president seems to take his inspiration not from the small towns and villages of New Hampshire, but from the capitals of Europe. With the economy in crisis, his answer was to borrow more money and to throw it at Washington bureaucrats and politicians, just like Europe. Instead of encouraging entrepreneurs and innovators and employers, he raises their taxes, piles on mounds of record-breaking regulation and bureaucracy, and gives more power to union bosses. Instead of recognizing the state's rightful authority to solve their own problems, he seizes power from them and rams through a disastrous national health care plan. This president's first answer to every problem is to take power from you and from your local government and from your state so that his so-called experts in Washington can make decisions for you. And with each of those decisions, we lose more of our freedom. You and I understand that. We look at our country and we know in our hearts that things aren't right and that they're not getting better. President Obama's European answers are not the solution to America's challenges. And in the campaign to come, the American ideals of economic freedom and opportunity need a clear and unapologetic defense, and I intend to make it because I have lived it. Mitt! 27 years ago, I left my job and went to join with some friends a small business. Like many of you, it had been a dream of mine to try and build a business from the ground up. We started in a little office a couple of hours from here, and over the years we were able to grow from our first 10 employees to hundreds. My work led me to become very deeply involved in helping other businesses, from startups to large companies that were going through tough times. Sometimes I was successful and we were able to help create jobs. Other times I wasn't. I learned how America competes with other companies in other countries, and what works in the real world and what doesn't. I left that business in 1999 to help put the Salt Lake City Olympics back on track. And when those games were over, I came back to Massachusetts to serve as governor. Now, I'd never held public office before, but I went at it like I ran businesses and like I ran the Olympics. Ask tough questions and take on the toughest problems first, because they'll get worse in the future if you don't. When I took office, we had a nearly $3 billion budget gap. My legislature was over 85% Democrat. The expectation was that we'd have to raise taxes, but I refused. I ordered instead a complete review of all state spending, made tough choices, and balanced the budget without raising taxes. That sent a message that business as usual was over. And then over the next 4 years, we consolidated agencies, we cut programs, we sold state property, and we cut taxes 19 times. I also found the state was giving over $1 billion away in free health care, much of it to people who could have paid something, but were just gaming the system. You won't be surprised that a lot of Democrats thought we should give them even more. I took on this problem and hammered out a solution that took a bad situation and made it better. Not perfect, but it was a state solution to our state's problem. At the end of the year, at the end of 4 years, it took over 800 vetoes, but we balanced every budget, restored a $2 billion rainy day fund, and kept our schools first among all 50 states. And I'm proud of that record. Now, all those experiences, starting and running businesses for 25 years, turning around the Olympics, governing a state, have helped shape who I am and how it is I lead. Of course, if I ran through a list of all my mistakes this afternoon, Ann would find it hilarious, and you'd be here all night. But I can tell you I've learned from the successes and from the failures. Turning something around, turning around a crisis, takes experience and bold action. And for millions of Americans, the economy is in crisis today. And unless we change course, it'll be in crisis for all of us tomorrow. Did you know that government, federal, state, and local, under President Obama, has grown to consume almost 40% of our economy? We're only inches away from ceasing to be a free economy. I will cap federal spending at 20% or less of the economy, and finally balance the budget. My generation your generation, will pass the torch to the next generation, not a bill. And I'm going to insist that Washington learns how to respect the Constitution, including the 10th Amendment. Now, we're going to return the responsibility and authority to the states for dozens of government programs. And that will begin with a complete repeal of Obamacare. From my first day in office, my number one job will be to see that America once again is number one in job creation. You know, if you want to create jobs, it helps to have actually had a job. And I have. I'm going to make our business taxes competitive with other nations, modernize regulations and bureaucracy, and finally promote America's trade interests. It's time for a president who cares more about America's workers than he does about America's union bosses. Over the last 30 years or so, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that a situation is hopeless. But I've never been very good at listening to those people, and I've always enjoyed proving them wrong. It's one of the lessons I learned from my dad. My father never graduated from college. He apprenticed as a lath and plaster carpenter, and he was darn good at it. He learned how to take a whole handful of nails, put them in his mouth, and then spit them out with the pointy end forward. Now, on his honeymoon with my mom, they drove across the country. He sold aluminum paint along the way to pay for gas and hotels. There were a lot of reasons that my father could have given up or set his sights lower. But Dad always believed in America. And in that America, a lath and plaster man could grow up and work his way to run a little car company called American Motors. And he could end up as governor of the very state where he'd once sold aluminum paint. For my dad, America was the land of opportunity, where the circumstances of birth are no barrier to achieving one's dreams. Small business and entrepreneurs were encouraged and respected, and a good worker could always find a good job. The spirit of enterprise, innovation, pioneering, and can-do propelled our standard of living and economy past that of any other nation on earth. I refuse to believe that America is just another place on the map with a flag. We stand for freedom and opportunity and hope. These last 2 years haven't been the best of times. But while we've lost a couple of years, we have not lost our way. The principles that made this nation a great and powerful leader of the world have not lost their meaning. They never will. We know we can bring this country back. I'm Mitt Romney. I believe in America, and I'm running for president of the United States.